All right, everybody, welcome back to Let's Relate, a very different type of podcast from previous weeks because today is going to be a shorter podcast. It's just going to be me because I wanted to explain to everyone what's been going on lately and why we missed our podcast today. So this will be going on Wednesday for you guys, but I just wanted to let you guys know what's good and going on. So there has been a big storm in Massachusetts. It's a big snowstorm, and that was last night, or Monday, I should say, and it left a lot of snow for us. 2 feet of snow, so it's caused a lot of problems for us. The shoveling of the snow was backbreaking, so that took a long time, and I've asked Nick if he wanted to record the podcast today, and as we both feel it was exhausting to clean the snow, so we're not going to record. We didn't record Monday for obvious reasons. It was snowing. It was rough. It was heavily snowing by 4 or 5 p.m. And I have classes now. My school has started, and I have classes Mondays and Wednesdays, and those are my pretty heavy days. I usually start from 11 in the morning to I go to 4:45 in the afternoon, or in the evening. So it's usually a very longer. I guess it's a very long time for me to go to classes, and we usually start recording our podcast around 3. Well, we usually meet up around 3, and then we get ready, and by the time it's 4, we have our coffees, we know what we're going to talk about, we're on the same wavelength, we have done our vocal exercises, and then we do our podcast. And it's usually 2 hours, but we take a break, and, in the middle, and we give it a quick sip of water, and that additionally takes like 20-something minutes. And if I need to go bathroom, or we need to make another coffee. So it varies time period, but sometimes we get done around 6, sometimes 6:30, and then we have to do editing, so that's additional hour or 2. Sometimes it's a lot of work we have to put into the podcast. So for this week, we're kind of up in the air right now because the snow has been happening, the school has been happening, and we're still trying to deal with the schedule. So as I think what we're going to do is we're still going to try to hit the podcast on Thursday. We'll try to record it on Thursday, and then we'll put it out on Friday. Mostly because I have school tomorrow. And I have classes from, 11 to 4:45, so I won't be free till 5. And then at best, if I go to Nick's at 5, trust me, it'll be like 7:30, 8 o'clock until we're done. And that's stretching it a little bit, because that's me saying, like, we can record a 2-hour podcast in like 2 hours and 10 minutes. No, it doesn't work like that. It's a lot different. There's a lot of thought process that goes into a podcast. We have to make sure the equipment works. We have to make sure coffee's good. If you want to drink coffee, if you want to drink tea, what topics does Nick want to talk about? What topics I want to talk about? It's a whole process. So it's like starting recording. Me going to record there at 5 and then saying that we'll finish by 8 is a bit of a stretch. Because even then, like, I have to do my work. Nick probably wants to relax because he had a long day, and we have our own lives to consider. So for today, it's just you're gonna get me. I will be doing hopefully an hour-long episode of something, because I don't want to do like a too short of an episode. But then again, this is just an informative episode to let you guys know what's been going on in our lives. This week, just in general, and how we're trying to adjust to things. So yeah, so my school started this week, February 1st. It's okay, and I'll tell you why. Because usually my school is one of the lucky ones who do testing in school, and we're required to do testing every week. And it's great. Don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, and it's mandatory for you to attend school, and it's a great step forward into keeping the school safe and keeping the students safe. Fantastic. But this year, this semester has been it's gonna be a little finicky because they want to test students twice a week, which I think it's a little too much, especially for students like me who commute from house. I mean, I don't live near the school. I drive at least 45 minutes back and forth. That's not 45 minutes going like all together. That's 45 minutes just one trip. So the traveling isn't an issue. It's more so, gas, the weather, and I just don't want to make a trip to school just to get tested. And so they're making us test twice a week now, and that's just rather painful for me because I'd rather not get tested. I don't know what good is coming from testing twice a week. It's more troublesome than, I guess, it's just being overprotective. I honestly don't get it. We did one test a week last year, and there was like barely any outgrow. There was a one massive outbreak at the college, and that's because a bunch of dumb freshmen decided to go party in the senior apartments. And this was pretty early on when the school started, like early September. I think it was like mid-September, and that's advisable. I mean, if you're gonna go party in a large crowd and someone has COVID, you expect to get a COVID outbreak. Like, it's a no-brainer. And then there was an outbreak which caused the schools to close down for a little bit, well, at least a section of the school, and they had to send a lot of students home. And there was a mass testing, and that was that. And then after that, there was nothing. There was maybe a couple of cases a week, like 6 or 2 or 3, but that was it. There was no mass outbreaks. The testing worked once a week. But now they've decided to do testing twice a week, which I don't know how that's gonna help. I mean, it's been proven that if you got COVID the day of, the tests won't be able to say that you have COVID. The virus has to at least be in your system for 24 hours for the test to at least be somewhat applicable, right? For the test to work, you need to have the virus and the strain of virus in your nose, in your throat, however they do the test. But mostly you need to have enough COVID bodies in your system multiplied to have it running in your nasal cavities, right? And so doing it so close, so I'm testing, I think it was Monday and Thursday, and I guess that's fine. But if I get tested Monday, then I get the test results Tuesday, like Monday night or Tuesday morning, something like that. And then I'll be fine for a day or two, and then I get tested again. I mean, I guess there's some sort of like incubation period, but I don't know what good it's doing. There was last time there was a 7-day period gap, and I felt kind of relieved because I didn't want to go back and forth every time. To do testing. I feel like the secondary test should be optional. If people want to do it, they could, but it's not something they should, because it's just putting more hassle on the commuter's end. I don't know. Me and my friends who go to college, pretty much everyone is a commuter because we don't want to pay the outrageous prices of dorming there. And it's really rough when someone lives like an hour and a half away and they have to travel college just to get tested. It's just not conventional. They didn't quite think this through, did they? They thought about the safety, but they didn't think about the commute. I guess safety is a concern, but I don't know. It's not gonna suddenly magically give you 0 results because, no matter what you do, people still go out of campus. People do like whatever they want to do in their meantime. So just because you're testing twice a week doesn't mean you're gonna suddenly like get better results. If people are gonna get sick from doing like, if they go eat on restaurant, then people are gonna keep getting sick. What do you want me to say? it's just a stupid thing. So that plays in a role of how we record. That's a pretty big thing. And the second thing is our job. So I work in school. I am somewhat of a handler of the observatory we have at the college, and I tutor. So I'm a tutor, and I tutor from home. But I tutor 3 days a week. I think I tutor Sunday, Monday, and then Wednesday. So that leaves me to only record on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which is great. And so what we wanted to do was, what we've been kind of planning around is, instead of doing recording the podcast Mondays and Wednesdays, which is what we originally do, which is why you guys get to listen to our beautiful voices Tuesday, Thursday, 6 in the morning. Instead of doing that, we'll record the podcast Tuesday and Thursdays, and then you'll just have a 1 day delay between when we get the podcast out. It'll still be the same schedule. It's just going to be 1 day apart. So instead of listening to Tuesday, Thursday, you'll be listening to it on Wednesday, Friday, and the world will continue and we'll be fine and everything will be okay. It's just 1 day delay. It's not going to make a big difference. And it's probably going to be starting from today because my job hasn't started yet, so it's a little different to tell right now. I am just going to go on a presumptive manner. How I'm just sketching it out. That if I'm working these days, I won't be able to put too much attention to podcast. It's especially on Tuesdays, at least, because I'm busy. I have homework. I'm usually tired from hella day. Usually doing a lot of work, just schoolwork, and tutoring is exhausting itself because I'm there sitting there 3 hours every night. Every night I have to tutor while waiting for students to come in and join in, and I'll usually just get tired of sitting around. It's basically like getting pinned to a computer. I mean, I know I'm complaining about I'm complaining about my job, which requires me to sit and wait for students to come help, and it's like 80% of it's just pretty much me doing nothing. But then again, I mean, it kind of gets boring after a while, It's the whole thing where if you're not challenging yourself, then everything's gonna seem boring to you. Sure, if you go to school, you can take like the same Spanish 1 class 12 times just to fill in like the requirements you have. Like if you have 2 requirements of English, then you can take like 2 reading comprehension courses, the same one twice, and they'll fill the requirement. But throughout those both classes, you'll be super bored because you're not going to challenge yourself. Maybe, the first time you'll be kind of interested in doing this stuff, but the second time you're just going to be sitting there. It's going to feel more of a chore to you than actual class. So, which is why it's a little different. You have to put a little bit of thought process into it. Where were we? I usually go on a tangent, and I need Nick to kind of divert me back to a rail. Jeez. This is going to be a very low-key podcast, I should tell you, because I'm going to keep it at least under an hour, just because I'm doing it. I don't have too much to talk about today. And I'm just going to keep it pretty zen. And I won't be listening to... Why not? Let me listen to some lo-fi music, because you guys won't be able to listen to it. And I'll put some in the post, which will be probably a lot different from what I listen right now. Way too loud. My ears just got blasted. Okay, I just wanted to see if the software I'm using was picking up the lo-fi music that's playing on Spotify. It doesn't. It's fine. It's good. Usually I have a pretty good setup going, but today it's a little different because we're just doing we're kind of doing it's improv, it's not planned out. I wanted to just do an informative session, just informative little thing saying like, oh, this is what's been going on, but I want to go a little bit more in detail. So I have that job. I tutor. That's something for my consideration. Nick also works. Nick works at the UPS store, so it's much more stressing for him because he works 40 hours a week. At least he tries to. I mean, the hours they give him, it's a little different when you have to do little jobs, but it is exhausting. And I've been there. I've done those jobs. I used to work at CVS. I used to work at Papagino's. These low end jobs and just entry level jobs, and it does get super exhausting after a while. And this snow day isn't really helping anyway, because we have these. I mean, you might think that 2 feet of snow is not that much, but trust me, when it comes to cleaning out like a wet 2 feet of snow, it's a lot. Especially for Nick, because he has think of a donut. He has a donut of a driveway, right? He has a half of a donut, because he has like a flower pot, like a island in the middle, like a semi-circle island in the middle, and then there's a donut of a driveway, which goes in and out, and so forth. So he definitely has a lot more to clean out. I did it with my dad, so it's a little different. We were both taking out the snow, so it's half and half, but it's a little different for him because he had to do it probably all alone. So I get it. It's exhausting. I'm giving him the day off. He could probably take tomorrow off too, and if he's too tired for Thursday's podcast, then we'll probably just won't do it. We'll just do it next week, because I get it. A snowstorm's just it's so problematic. Like, if you're not a northerner, you probably won't understand, but if you're a northerner, you probably get it. Like, it's exhausting. Just it's not so bad being out in the snow for so many hours. It's just the amount of snow you have to lift and throw. It's like, so a lot of people like, you are out in the snow and you get numb and it's horrible. You feel the cold. It's not the cold that bothers you. The cold actually helps you. The cold's actually pretty nice. Because while you're doing all this work, if you have like a couple layers on, your body's like getting warm. So snow is nice. Snow is actually kind of helping. But it's just the lifting of the snow. And especially this is a wet snow. It's a lot different, because if you walk over it, if you have a snowplow, you snowplow over it. If you don't get the snow on the bottom, then it gets compact over time if you walk over it, and that's a little tough to kind of scrape out and check it out. So it's a process. I tell you. Jeez. I should probably get a coffee at some point. But I honestly want to go to bed tonight, so I don't want to drink too much. I'll make like a half a cup during the break. We'll see. So I can tell you guys about my classes, what's been going on. So I'm taking 5 courses this semester, just to graduate from my engineering degree, and that's gonna be fun. But I'm also, I think I kind of, the only things I have left right now are like my elective requirements. So I have like an history requirement and like ethics and stuff like that I have to complete. And so I have to kind of look into a couple of those things. But I think I'm starting. I'm a communication minor, so I have to try to take some of those classes. So I'm kind of implementing those with my electives right now. So I have like a social science requirement, right? That's something I have to take. That's one of the courses. And instead of taking a social science class and my minor counts as a social science class. So I'm kind of implementing one course in both things. A lot of colleges don't do that, but my college is kind of a little bit nicer in that way, that it allows a course to fulfill multiple requirements. God, imagine if I had to complete the course for engineering fully and then do I don't want to think about that. That's too much. That's a lot of money. I'll be so much in debt. Oh Christ. Stretching out right now. Stretching a little bit. I didn't help my throat. I usually have a little bit of honey or at least some sugary drink just to ease my throat before we start, or at least do some yoga, like throat yoga, and it's like just making the most bass noise with your throat. So my bass noise is and I just do that for like a solid minute or two just to practice my vocal cords. I'm drinking water. And if you want to go a step far, you do the O's. You go the oh, whoa, whoa. And that usually helps your tongue make those tough O sounds. You can even go to the vowels, and you can do the V's, the V's, the T's, and the T's, and you can kind of go out through these practices. A lot of bigger shows, they're a lot more sophisticated than what we do right now, and they actually implemented a lot of these practices just to help your throat. It's better to sound good while you're doing a podcast, and for me right now, I do not sound good. My throat's kind of chumming up a little bit because I'm a little bit on the exhausted side after cleaning the snow, and I was just in a class. I had a 2 p.m. class, so I just exited that. Now I'm doing this, and probably gonna after this go do homework, and hopefully edit while I do the homework. Cause actually I wouldn't have to edit too much today because I'm just it's a solo podcast, and solos want so ease to my heart because don't get me wrong, when I host with Nick, it's fun, but it's not so fun afterwards because I have to edit 2 different audios, and that gets a little tough at times just because so if you don't know how audio works, audios run at their own frequency, a computer runs at its frequency, and if you set like 2 recording devices on 2 different computers using the same software, right? I'm using Audacity, and if Nick's using Audacity, and we both start recording at 44,000 hertz, right? At some point throughout the audio recording, the audio is going to go out of sync because each computer runs on its own frequency. And once that frequency goes out of sync, the audio's go out of sync because there's a delay. Maybe your frames for your computer hasn't refreshed quite a bit, or whatever it is. There's a lag in the computer. Your computer is using up a lot more memory. 1,000 different problems. So that's like the key problem that it comes into, where the audio goes out of sync for the recordings, and then I have to edit the audio manually, where I'll cut if it's out of sync. I'll cut one of our audios, it's usually mine, and I'll just move it slightly to like a millisecond. And since Nick's mics also picks up my audio, it's easier for me to line it up, so I can align my voice with the echo that Nick's mic picks up. And that way I'll know that they're both in sync, and then I can go on from there. And I usually do that every 10 minutes. I check the audio, and if I pick something up, if I see it's out of sync, I'll run it back. I'll go back to run it by a minute. So I'll say, like, if it's out of sync at 20 minutes, I'll go run 19, then 18, then 17, and then see where the audio went out of place, and then listen to that minute. And then it's a long process. It's something that it gets painful sometimes. Audacity helps me do that quite a bit easier. I used to use a online software before this, but it didn't end up being so useful because the processing time for that said online software just took too long. Like a 30-minute video would take 2 to 3 hours to process, and that was just too much for me to deal with. So the Audacity helps me do that in maybe 20-30 minutes, something like that at best. Sometimes it's not even that much. Sometimes it's just like at best like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It's not that stretch frame. It's different for longer audios, but It varies. Like if you did like a 2-hour podcast, then it will vary. But anyhow, feeling a little cozy right now. Feeling a little cozy. Feeling nice. Where were we? Oh, my classes. Okay, so right now I'm taking a nature. What is it called? I don't know my courses' names because, believe me or not, I also hate school, much like everyone in the world. Uh, One of my classes, the first classes I start with in Mondays, is called Nature and Music. It's about listening to music. It's just it's a really good class. It's like an arts and literature course, and I like it. It's very good. It basically enhances the way you see music, the way you listen to music. It makes you break down a lot of things in the music era, in the music world. So there's like certain things that a lot of musicians use, like a lot of famous. It's like a wow or like a different rhythm that goes with the song. That's very catchy at times. And if you heard it, maybe in Blinding Lights and Take on Me, you going back to Chicago, you know, some of these famous bands and musicians who use these catchy rhythms and their songs catch on over time, which usually goes like number 1, number 2 on listings, you know, and like America's Most Listened or something like that. So kind of breaking that down and understanding what is the purpose of that and how does that help enhance the music, or does it that's not enhance the music? Is it too repetitive? Is it cliche at this point? It's we'll see how that goes. The next class I have to take is public communications. It's just something I have to take. It's a course about public speaking, basically, and speaking in front of 80, 90 people, 100 people, but I'm doing it much less. And I never really had an issue with public speaking. I've always been one of those people who was okay with just going up and speaking. And this one of the things that this course goes into that I'm really, you know, intrigued about learning is the anxiety that people experience when you public speak, right? Like you freeze up sometimes, or you get this really gooey feeling or the anxiety in your belly, and you're like, oh my god, what if I can't do it? You start doubting yourself, you start hesitating, and that's completely normal. That is very normal, and I experience that quite a bit. So don't worry about it if you do it in the world. It's a completely normal feeling. What I do want to learn is why that happens, because I've kind of overcome it over the years. I'll still get it. Like if I'm nervous about something, if I'm nervous about messing up, then I'll still get the feeling, and I'll freeze up, and I'll just have that moment where I'm like, oh crap, I'm kind of messing up right now. And in the presentation or whatever, you freeze up, and that's a quite common feeling. But I want to learn why that happens and how to kind of overcome it, because I've kind of gotten around it. I've kind of stopped caring about that feeling. I just overcome it over time. Like if I'm doing presentation, I start to get that feeling, I just focus on what I'm saying, and it usually goes away. But there's usually a process to dealing with this kind of things, and I want to see if the process that the course offers kind of helps me. It would be a very interesting thing to learn, because believe it or not, it's really easy to record a podcast. Because right now I'm talking to you guys through a screen, just through a mic. I'm not doing a video. I'm not live in front of anyone. Now I don't have that pressure upon me to always get something 100% right, because I can cut the audio out, even though I do try to get everything 100% right, like recording wise, you know, not like information wise. I'll usually try to do this in one go, and I don't like making cuts. I don't like editing something out. I'll try to be careful, and I need to learn that it's okay to edit, because I've been always the person to kind of just, it's like a gung-ho thing, you know. It's like you have to do it great from get-go or it's not good at all. And I need to kind of get around that whole gist and be like, okay, it's okay to edit if you mess something up, because it's still going to be just as good as you've done it before, you know. it's the same thing as most things in life. If you don't succeed the first time, then it's okay to, kind of take a step back, rethink what you're doing, and then do it again. And yeah, that's my key lead thing. Anywho, one of my next courses is finite element analysis. Now, not a lot of people will understand what that is. That's because it's an engineering term. That means I'm looking on a really micro scale of things, right? There's a macro, which means big, micro means small, and then nano means smaller. I'm looking at the micro scale of things, right? So when an iron beam bends, right, I'm looking at the place it bends, and I want to see what stresses applied where made it bend, or how this beam failed, and what stresses from the point of stress, that the main source of stress leading up to the bend caused it. If you understand what I'm trying to say, right? When you break a rope, when you break a string of sorts, right? You pull it really hard and it snaps, and that's because the tendrils in the rope are not strong enough to hold that pressure, hold that force you're applying, and so they start breaking thread by thread, and then eventually it's too weak, so a lot of threads snap at the same time. And that's what the whole class is about. It's not about snapping ropes, but it's much more engineering a look into what causes the things to bend. Can I calculate it? How can I calculate it? Can I use a program, or can I do it through hands? Can I hand calculate it? Answer to all of those is yes. I can hand calculate it. I can use a software, and it is very difficult. But I have done it in the past, so it's kind of like an addition. Like I've done it last semester as something, as a part of a class. It's something I had to do for class. But this is very focused, so it's way more detailed in this analysis. My fourth course I'm taking is Intro to Communications. How about this? How about this? We're going to take a quick break because it is half an hour point. It's 32 minutes. So I'm going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we're going to discuss more of my classes, because I don't want to go too long before we take in a break. And I usually hate doing the thing. What I do is where I keep going past their median point, and I usually just put the ad break really late, the sponsor of the episode. So what I'm going to try to do is try to put it really early on, and hopefully you guys can get like a very non-stop episode after like the sponsor period. But right now, it's time for our sponsor, Anchor. So give it up to Anchor, everybody. I'll be right back with some coffee. All right, I'm back. Yeah, I just got some coffee. I have some leftover from, well, I should phrase that differently. I made some coffee from a leftover coffee I had left. It's like a festive blend. It's like holiday season blend. And even though I said I would make like half a cup, made a full cup. So sucks to suck for me, I guess. No, it's fine. I gotten used to coffee over time, especially doing this show, which requires me to drink coffee as part of it. I've gotten used to it. It's a lot different. Compared to when I first started, when I used to drink coffee, it was a lot different because we used to drink coffee like at night, hours before we would sleep. So it was a lot different back then compared to now, where it is generally 5 to 6 hours before we go to bed, and so the caffeine usually wears down. And we've kind of limited our coffee intake to 1 cup, even though Nick can't control his and he just chugs it down even before the podcast has begun, which I need to crack down on him for a little bit, because if we're going to do a show about coffee, he needs to not touch his coffee before the show starts. Maybe a sip, but no more, because by the time we're done with the podcast, the coffee's left, not even there anymore. And the main idea of this podcast surrounds around coffee. That's especially what we branded it as. So what I need to do is kind of crack down on him a little bit and say, don't touch your coffee. If you want to take a sip is fine. Don't drink until we start. And if you feel like you're gonna be done, just leave a little bit in, because I want to do a final sip. A final sip usually means the end of the show and end of the coffee. It doesn't always work out that way, but I don't drink too much coffee as we talk through the podcast. I like to take my time about what I'm thinking about. I'm trying to explain my idea, and usually that ends up being me explaining and not drinking coffee, which ends up leaving coffee in my cup. So it's a little bit different, I should say, for both of us. But we do need to get adjusted with that whole situation. Don't worry. Well, it's something I need to work on for both of us. Oh boy. Alright, so continuing with my classes that we're talking about. My next class is Intro to Communication. That's the one class I'm not sure what I will be doing in, because it's a communications and media class, which I'm assuming will cover what are some different ways we communicate with each other. There's visuals, there's hearing, there is, of course, we talk, there's sign language now. I just shouldn't say now. It's been around for forever. Then there is Braille, learning by touch, communication by textile touching. So it's textile touching, just touch. So there's a lot of different aspects and variables that come into communication. So that may be kind of an interesting class, but I'm waiting on tomorrow. I already have homework. I still haven't done it, but it's just reading, so I'm just gonna read as something. Reading is fine. One of the classes requires me to do a CPA, which is basically answering questions as you read, and that is my least favorite thing to do in any class, because first of all, if I'm reading, I like to be fully immersed into the reading, and it's really awful, because if I've read the questions that I have to answer before, then my mind gets stuck at that whenever I find an answer to one of those questions, and it's hard for me to kind of budge forward, right? It's like getting if you have a wagon, or like a horse a horse wagon from like 1780s or something, right? And you're moving forward, and there's a ditch. Your wagon gets stuck in a ditch. That's my mind. It gets stuck in this ditch, which is an answer to one of the questions, and it's tough for me to kind of pry it forward. Or the second thing is, if I am fully immersed in the reading the first time around, I don't like to go back to the reading and dissect it down. It kind of loses the whole. I don't want to say the whole meaning and the immersiveness of the reading, but it ruins the whole message and the whole idea, the image I got from the reading from the first time around. It's like imagine we were grammatically editing Harry Potter. It would ruin Harry Potter for you, most at least. I mean, it's like Harry Potter said this because he was a mean. It's like, no, just stop right there. It's a fictional book, and much like what I'm reading right now, which is just, it's not fictional, but it's a fictitious thing that I could just have to read, and it gives me a knowledge. You don't do grammatical analysis on mathematics books. It's like, this professor wrote with this comma, it shouldn't be there. It's like, is it really necessary? No. Which means we probably shouldn't do it. It adds some learning curve to some of the students, but not every student. It's not that immersive and inclusive to all students. It's just something that teachers do, and I don't like it. It's personally, a class to me should be something fun, something you should enjoy, something you want to learn about. If a class is about uh, earthquakes, right? A very bland topic, I should say. Then it should be kept interesting enough to learn about. It shouldn't just be like the earthquakes are vibrational rumblings underground happened by tucked. Stop all that. It it should make this. I like being in a class where a subject makes me question what I'm learning about. I want to question what an earthquake is. Not just not told up front. Then it loses that curious mind situation. When I took my class this winter, during my winter break, I was taking a class about the Indian Ocean spice and slavery trade, right? And throughout the whole course, it was very broad. The course was very broad about a lot of things, like pirates. It didn't give enough information about, how and what people did to kind of over or adapt in the Indian Ocean. There was information about boats. There was information about what how they traded, what boats they used, but it wasn't about how they adapted to new situations, like how they adapted to Portuguese, how they adapted to the Dutch or the British coming and taking over their lands. There wasn't information about that. And one of the key things that I was curious about in the classes, and I loved, is that class made me question about all those things. Mainly piracy. I learned more about piracy in this class than I have learned. It just made me question about piracy more than I've ever questioned piracy. Even the Disney movie Pirates of the Caribbean didn't make me question piracy. I get it, that's fictional and this is kind of history, but then again, I like questioning things, or having something question me. I'm complicated. Should just leave it at that. Oh dear. And then my last of all classes, senior design. It's basically a class where you treat it as an adult engineer and you just have to design something. And this is senior design 2, which is a continuation from senior design 1, which was something I took last semester, where we're designing, drumroll please, drivable suitcase. Yep, a drivable suitcase. Nothing fancy, nothing too weird. It's just for transport or travel on in a terminal. It looks super silly, but then again, it's like using a scooter when you're 30 years old. It's not cool, but you're just doing it to go around. I like it. It's something that people kind of have already worked on, and there's a market for it. That's for sure. And imagine instead of walking from terminal 13 to terminal 42 or whatever. I don't know how many terminals are at this airport, but you going a long distance, like terminal 13 to 28 or something like this. Instead of walking all this time, you just, click on your scooter suitcase, get right on that scooter suitcase and start on chugging. You're just going 5 miles an hour at best, 8 miles an hour. It's pretty slow, but it's quite a speed when you're instead of walking, you're going pretty fast. So, I don't know, it's fun, it's intuitive, it's creative. I like that idea when we first thought about it. It was actually a joke. I made a joke, and the team was like, let's do that. And I was like, no, let's think about something else. And they were like, no, let's just do it. I was like, all right, well, let's do that. And I like my team because they also love a challenge. All of us do. And it's very gung ho, where we're just like, if you said something, we're gonna go with it. Like in the class, was it finite element analysis? We're supposed to form teams for projects in that class, and we're supposed to make teams of 4. and you know, I usually go with my team that I'm comfortable with. I know that we work great together, and we're usually in very tune. We're on the same wavelength, so we don't have to explain too much to each other. And I came up with a really stupid name for our team called Dangerous Doritos, just because I was hungry and there was something going through my mind, and and that's our name now. We're not changing it, according to my one of my team members. We're just gonna keep it Dangerous Doritos. I was gonna kind of change it around, or maybe like lemon head pants or something like that. Lemon head pants. I should not name things in the future. Jesus. Oh man, my throat feels pillaged from acid. Taking a sip of this coffee. It's actually good sweetness. I like it. So no one ever does this, but I like to gamble on my sugar when I put sugar into my coffee, and I kind of put the amount of sugar into coffee that is gonna be fit for 1 cup of the size of that cup, So if it's like a medium-sized cup, then I put or like an average cup, then I put 3 spoons. If it's a large cup, then I'll put 5 or maybe 6, double what I usually do. And if it's a small cup, if I'm looking at espresso, then I usually try to keep it around 3 or 4, especially an espresso. But if it's just the coffee, then it's just two cups. Two spoons is fine. 2 cups, Jesus. 2 cups of sugar is a lot. No, just spoons. I'm talking about spoons. Sorry. Spoons of sugar. Actually, not badly made. I don't like this festive flavor, and here's why. Its aftertaste is very bitter, and they kind of tried putting a little Christmassy candy cane aftertaste to it, and it doesn't go well together, with coffee at least. It's something good in a candy, that's for sure, or a cake, I guess, but not good here because the aftertaste just kills it. The coffee aftertaste, it's alright, but actually coffee aftertaste I kind of like, but then I taste the festive aftertaste, and I'm like, ugh, kind of throws me off. Honestly, the tea episode we did was quite a lot of fun because the tea was fantastic, and this was some expensive tea, I told you. And this is how if you ever wondered how we tell expensive compared to cheap, you need to look at the sizing of things, right? And the effort that's been put into the coffee. The coffee I'm drinking right now, it's fairly cheap because if I manage to inspect the coffee, it's going to be all different sizes. There's going to be large granules, some fine, smaller granules, and it's anywhere from between those two, right? Those are just extremes I've mentioned, and it's anything from between those two. It's not consistent. Consistency is the key in coffee, right? If you're making French toast, French press coffee, you need consistent medium grains. If you're making hand pour, which is a really difficult method, you need a fine coffee, fine, really nice, sand-like almost, but really fine, powdery coffee, right? And if you're doing just a boiled coffee, where you just put the coffee into a pot of water and you just boil it to get all the flavor out, and then you just drain the coffee out with a mesh of some sorts, right? Then that's a large granule coffee. And there's espressos and different things, but if it's not if it's not consistent in flavor and the way it's made, then it's a crappy coffee. But for tea, it's a little different, right? Tea, you can always have a really good coffee, a good tea, or a bad tea. It all differs on the smell of the leaves, and I don't want to say size, but then again, it's the consistency and the size. If you make tea from leaves that are some are big, some are small, some are wilted, some are not that green, and if you're making green tea, then you want consistency in leaves. If you're making green tea with big leaves, you want all of them to be big leaves. If you're making with a tea bag, it's a little different because tea bags are itself an image of low-end coffee, especially in green low-end coffee, low-end tea, especially in green and black tea, because there's usually a process that carries out. There's a medium-end tea, high-end tea, and a low-end tea. And the low-end tea is a tea bag because when they process the tea leaves, right, the bigger tea leaves, the one that are high quality, get separated from the medium and the low quality, and they get packed separately. They're a little tough to get, so they're expensive. Medium coffee is the semi-big leftovers from the tea leaves that they can still collect. They're still averagely available, medium priced coffee. And then there is the dust that that's just left over from all the major processing things. And that dust is the low-end tea. The low-end tea is the tea bags, which you get. If you ever looked into a really cheap made tea bag, cheaply made tea bag. I don't want to say Lipton, but Lipton's actually a pretty good tea. I don't want to name names, but I've experienced some very low-end tea in my experience, and Lipton's quite actually pretty above those. But it differs, it takes experience to kind of separate those out. And sometimes a powdery tea may really be good, but it depends on the tea maker, the batch, how consistent the flavor they are, if each tea bag tastes the same. If it doesn't, then sometimes you get a good, sometimes you get a bad batch. It's all dependent on how people make it. And I forget, one of the tea companies I've come across, I think it's like it's a big tea. Is it a big tea? Let me look at tea companies. Let's look it up. Let's look at images. Usually, best way to look at it, for me at least. I usually look at images just to see the variety. There's probably better ways to do it. Tazo, I know, is pretty quality. It's expensive. Tazo is an expensive consumer tea. So if you want to get Tazo, it's actually rare at times to get some of the Tazo teas. And if you get some, cherish it because they are very flavorful, very, very nice, very consistent in their flavor. I've tasted them over time. And I actually have 2 big boxes of tea that I had to throw out from Tazo, which was quite painful because they were my favorite. They were pomegranate tea. Is it pomegranate? I forget. It was one of the sour teas, but it was actually quite flavorful. And I don't know, it was just a sad experience. It was moisture that caught into the bags, made them wet, and made them taste super awful. So I just had to check them out. I think my mom uses it into some plants. Which, it's kind of nutritious. The plants kind of take some nutrition off those tea bags. I can't seem to quite find it. Research dead air period of this episode. Anyway, it's there's like loose leaf and there's tea bags. If loose leaves are usually pretty good. Because, well, if you don't know what loose leaves are, they're basically just as it sounds in the words, that they're loose leaves. But then there is the loose leaf tea bags, which actually, depending on the company, it differs. They're different, and one of the companies that I'm talking about is a loose leaf tea bag, and it's basically a tea bag just with loose leaves in it. It doesn't change a lot of things, but it just takes a longer infusion period for me. That's what I think. And if you really want to make a flavorful tea from loose leaf, I strongly prefer the French press. And a lot of people might be saying right now, "Hey, Drew, isn't French press just to make coffee? Isn't it make Yes, it is to make coffee. French presses are to make coffee, but they can also be made to use tea. I tell you why. Because they're fantastic in the way they're made. If you use it the right way, you can make a really good, flavorful pressed tea. You know, which you add the water, you mix the leaves very gently, so not to rough it up, because you can damage the leaves, and if you damage too much of the leaf, it releases like sort of a toxic, bitterish flavor. So you don't want to do that. You gently do it. Not with every leaves, but some leaves do it. So I always go with the gentle route. It takes more time, but I don't know. I like to take my time. I think it's called the tea I'm thinking of is called Big Elo. Big Low? I forget. Anywho, the press itself, when you press the tea leaves down, itself releases a lot of flavor. And I usually like to do it 2 to 3 times just to release all the flavors I can. Not to do it too hard, because then again you can, as I said, release some of those toxic bittery flavors. So I don't like to do too much, but just gentle push. And I understand it will, yeah, it leaves some of the water, the tea inside the French press. That's fine. That's a sacrifice you have to make, okay? Don't worry about that. This is a really flavorful tea you're going to get. All right, let's look this up. Do I have the right brand? Yep, no, I don't know. It's not Big Elo. Big Elo has good tea. You know, they have pretty quality tea, but they're not the ones I'm talking about. I forget the name I'm talking about. It was a long time ago. I had this, I think it's like 1 or 2 bags that I had. Just something I got from an event, and that was it. And they were pretty freaking nice, I tell you. Like, quality tea. Who knows? Whatever. It's fine. It's fine. Maybe I'll find it and I'll bring it to you guys a week later. Anywho, that's today. That's what we've been doing through. I don't know what Nick's been going through. Maybe we'll ask him next week. But that's me. I'm starting classes. Nick's got a job. I've got a job. I don't think they've started yet. At some point they'll start. And once they keep rolling, they're gonna roll pretty hard, pretty fast. Am I excited about this semester? I am not sure. I honestly don't know. Maybe. It's a weird experience, you know. It's a euphoric feeling where it's like I'm sort of excited, but then again I'm not really, because it is work. It's like it's a really stupid analogy, but if you have like, if you have kids, you know, if you just have newborn kids and you're someone who goes to work, then that Monday feeling will be very euphoric, because you're happy to get out of the house because the kids are loud and you could just found some peace in your mind and space. But then again, it's Monday and you're going to work, so it's not really that great. You know, it's that kind of feeling, but it's different. It's for school. So, anywho, I'm gonna try to wrap it up because it's almost end of time. I took like 3 sips of this coffee, so I'm gonna keep drinking even when the podcast is over. It's actually pretty well done, and sugar's kind of masking a lot of aftertaste, but then again, I still kind of get it. So, thank you for joining, everybody. Today was a pretty low-key, chill podcast, because I just want to keep you guys updated on what's been going on. And it's not good. Not everything's good right now. But once the snow's starting to melt a little bit, the roads are clear, it's going to start to look up. Anywho, thank you for joining me. Still in the old script. Thank you for joining me. If you like the podcast, hit that really nice follow button on Spotify. It really tells me and Nick that you guys like to listen to. What the hell? Listen to us. Oh man. So we can keep doing these quality casts in the future. and put more effort into these, and maybe start getting the video out. Something I was thinking about is for you lovely people, we're gonna, since we swear a lot in our podcast, we're gonna put the first 13 or so podcasts we've done without ads. We're not gonna monetize them at all, so you can enjoy the first 13 podcasts on YouTube without any ads at all. And that'd be nice. Wouldn't that be nice? That's some member experience right there. But hey, we're just starting. Don't worry. Once we get this podcast rolling, kind of in the 500K followers, then we'll start thinking about memberships. But nothing right now. Okay, nothing right now. We're just focused on growing right now. Anywho, thank you for joining me. That's been the updates for what's been going on today and yesterday and the Monday, and we'll be back. Yeah, we'll be back. Hopefully Friday, whenever we can. All right, take care, everybody.